Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and I'm your host today. My guest is Elizabeth Ann Hill. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you were able to come. We are re-recording. We had one recording that didn't get saved. Today we get to do it with video for the first time. This is going to be the first podcast episode that is both published as video on YouTube and as audio on the podcast platforms. So this is really exciting.
New beginning for you, your show. Very exciting.
Yes. Okay. So, Elizabeth, you have a really, really fascinating story with many, many background notes to take into account how you got to trust in spirit in everything you do. Last time we were speaking a lot about how this trust plays out because you depend on it for everything. It's not like you have a job where you get a stable, clear income that you know where it's going to come from the next moment. It's always coming to you through your journey of trust.
Always.
So I'd like to hear more about it.
Well, I'll give the nutshell again. Even though you've heard it, but we're going to pretend you haven't. So my spiritual journey began mainly back in 2002 when my identical twin sister, Catherine Mary Hill, who was a United States Border Patrol agent, she was killed in what they call in the line of duty on the U.S. border. And she had been having kind of a spiritual awakening right before she passed, and she was reading all these books and she was trying to get my attention about it, but I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, go away. Because she was just saying things that I really didn't know what she was talking about. But after she died, I found all of her books and her notes and everything, and it just started me completely in a whole new direction, a whole new understanding about what is life and what is this life and what is it all about. And I also began to have a lot of communication with her in dream states, and then I learned about meditation and also beings of other consciousness, higher consciousness, we might call masters and angelic presence or whatever. And I would wake up, there were blue lights by my bed, I would see people, and I would hear names like Jesus was one of the main names, and Paramahansa Yogananda, who had a very profound influence on especially the beginning part of the journey after my sister passed. And so I began to have communication with her, and I began to have all these dreams and learning about meditation and learning about all these things. So I started to do, the information kept coming through, this bells were ringing in the back of my consciousness that there is so much more to this story. I mean, this is only the beginning of the story. And 3 days after my sister passed, there was a lot of symbolism in the numbers. Like on the third day, I was getting ready to meet with the United States Border Patrol to plan her very public funeral with the riderless horse and the 21-gun salute and the helicopter flyby and all of this. And it just hit me what I was about to do, and I fell onto my knees like, this is my twin sister. I'm planning her funeral. And I was sobbing, and then there was this lightning bolt communication that came from God. I mean, boom. Your sister Kathy is fine. Remember what she was doing and talking about before she died. And from that moment on, my tears stopped. Everything stopped. I'm like, wow, there's something really big happening here. Anyway, so I went on and I started having dreams where she would come in and speak to me and everything. And then there were guides and all kinds of things started happening. Synchronicities that let me know she was definitely not dead. There's no such thing. And of course, as most of us listening to this know, there's death doesn't exist, but she was still very much there, just at a different frequency, and she was still helping me. And then I had all these synchronicities, and I wrote this book called Twin Souls, A Message of Hope for the New Millennium. And that started in about 2003 to about 2006 or 7. So we're now in 2022. So it's so much has happened since that time, but that was the precursor. I felt like, because now I'm writing another book that goes along with this journey that I'm on, that almost feels like that was just the beginning, to explain the beginning of how it all came about. And then now this book, which I'm writing, living and writing, is like kind of the main show. So in 2008, I was connected with a trans-channel medium. Her name was Glenda Dietrich. She passed away in 2009. But through a series of synchronistic events, I was connected with her. Someone who was promoting mediums and psychics and people like that asked me, can you have a bunch of readings with all these people to see if they're legitimate? And as you know, I lost, my mother, my father, my identical twin sister. I only had one living family member left. That's my brother. And he's off on his own journey. So they knew that I had all these people that were passed. And so I did these readings, and Glenda Dietrich was one of the people. And we had this amazing, 2-hour session, and she told me things, using astrology and numerology and her own psychic gifts. And then at the end, she said, well, we're going to do this channeling, and some guides are going to come through to speak to you. And it's not going to be me. I'm just the channel. And so, okay, so we did that. And then during that session, they started saying some very profound things to me. And do you want to ask questions? And I, whoa, questions. I mean, I have so many questions. And I was a little flabbergasted, and I asked a few, and then it was over. And then, after that, I couldn't stop thinking about this. I had a chance to ask questions, and so it just wouldn't go away. And so finally, I got the feeling that, I need to ask Glenda if we can do this again. And I asked her, and she said, well, normally I say no, because it takes huge energy out of her to do that. She was kind of like Edgar Casey. She would go into almost like a sleep state where she was just completely gone, in a way. And then the universal guides could use her to speak. But she said, I'm being compelled to say yes. So we did this where I was going to write the questions, and she was just not going to know what they were, and she was just going to be in a trance state, and we were going to do this, what we call interview with the universe. Sorry, I have allergies running here today. And so I sat on the beach. I was in San Diego. That's where I grew up most of my life, and writing out my questions, all these questions. And I kept asking people, what would you ask the guides, the higher guides? And if you could, no one could come up with anything hardly. And so I came up with 250 questions, and I flew to Minneapolis where she was, and we did this recording for 3 days. And it was the most profound experience. I mean, you could feel, and actually, right before we did this, there was an F4 tornado that went right through the town where we were recording. And later we were told that the guides that we were working with facilitated that because the energy needed to be cleared so much in order for them to come in. And every building was had so much damage except for the one that we were going to be in. There was one pane of glass that had held. And kind of like what we are doing here, there was all these there was always sound issues seemingly. But they said, that's just our presence. We want, we're just there with you. And so, but still, we were able to do the recording, and it took 3 days, and I asked my questions. And then we had all of these channelings that were not part of this recording, which I have made public. You can listen to them. There's three different ones. And then there were all these other ones that were just for me. And they were said to me, now you're basically explaining to me about soul contracts that, it's also in the interview, that we make these soul on a soul level, because there's many levels. We're multidimensional beings. And on the soul level, it's still an expanding, growing being in a way, but it's much more expanded and incorporates many, many lifetimes going on simultaneously. But we make these agreements that we're going to have certain challenges and certain experiences for a particular reason, to overcome some of the things that in other lifetimes we could not, or earlier in our life. And so they said, that yes, there is this grand awakening, and you can hear this on the interview with the universe. The very first opening statement is that, this This is a receiving of information from you and by you, which means, which I understood to mean, that this is all my multidimensional self. We call it guides, but really it's my own higher self and the multidimensionality that I am, and we all are that. So we call them guides, and angels would really, as we know, ultimately it's just one, but that one is kind of breaking down into different experiences. Anyway, so I was bringing through this information, and then there would be a book, an experiential journey, and then a book, which is what I'm working on as I live it. And they said, you are going to face the deepest fears of all of humanity. Okay, that's lovely. So, but I mean, somehow I just knew. They said, but you're not walking this alone. And you wanted to take the energy of this shift that's coming into the planet to clear as much as you can. So you made it very intense, very fascinating by your own choice. But you, in the end result, is much. It's a journey of awakening, basically. I mean, you're transmuting everything, and I mean everything is, and a lot of people are doing that as well. Probably most people would not take, as far as letting go of all the safety nets like money and job, and not that many people are doing that, although there are some, and they're starting to come forward. But I was ahead of the crowd because I started in 2008, and they said that I had come in with this huge amount of power, and I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, in terms that you can understand, it means that you know how to think for yourself, capital S, that I came in with the knowing the ways that things are happening, have been happening, will no longer work because we are moving into a higher frequency. It's very simple. It's not some big woo-woo thing. It's like every so often there's an evolutionary leap on this. All of it is makes an evolutionary leap, and this is just one. And but the Earth itself, this is what they said, has made, because the Earth is a being, has made the decision with Source that it's going to move out of the third dimension to the fourth into the fifth, which is, again, not a bunch of woo-woo. It's just a higher frequency. It's a lighter, there's not as much density. And so anyone who wants to go along with planet Earth has to do the same journey. So my part was the money and, survival, and how does what I need come to me when I need it? What is really the truth about who I am, and what brings money and a roof over my head and food to eat, right? Because a lot of people have had really amazing awakening experiences, but that's not necessarily embodied and integrated across the board. They still think that they have to force themselves to do some job that they hate or something. They still think that they have to force themselves maybe to stay in a relationship because they're too afraid that maybe they won't be supported. And so my job was to go like, okay, I'll let it all go, and I'll travel the world, only solely guided by my higher self's wisdom, and my sister along for the ride, and anyone else. All these guides and beings said that they would be with me. So it kind of happened, though. I didn't make it happen. It was like everything just started falling away. And then I met this man at a conference. Glenna and I had gone to this conference in Tennessee and presented the interview of the universe to this conference. And then a year later, he messaged me out of the blue and said, hey, what's going on? And everything at that point was gone. I had no home, no car. I was staying with someone, and I told him what was going on. And he said, oh, well, I would like to invite you to come to live in this place. He was building this big healing center right on this gorgeous river in Tennessee. And the name of the town was Elizabethton, Tennessee. So that was the beginning of my, leaving my home of San Diego. And there was a car. He said, there's a car here for you. So I sold everything, got rid of everything. I have a few things in a friend's attic in San Diego, but little did I know I wasn't going to be going back to those things. I thought maybe I'm going to go to Tennessee and do something, but no, that's where it all started. And I was in Elizabethton, Tennessee, in this little small town, beautiful, adorable, in this big, huge, gorgeous healing center. And he lived in Seattle, so, I was there by myself. And that's where I spent hours and hours and hours and hours reading the Course in Miracles had come to me. I read it through twice. I did it all the way through twice, the text and the workbook. I was like absolutely dedicated to what does this really say? What does it mean? Anyway, I did that, and during that time, and then onward, it ended up being that I ended up going overseas, and every day down to like zero money, maybe not every day, sometimes every week, even sometimes it would be longer than that, but very, very often, every single night, didn't know where I was going to sleep, what I was going to eat, anything, nothing. And then, but it wasn't passive. I had to raise my frequency. This is we live in a realm of energy and frequency. Nikola Tesla knew this. And, just because the guide said, just because this realm is an illusion, so to speak, doesn't mean that there's not laws that we agree to live by. The law of gravity, the law of attraction. Like energy attracts like energy. So I had to work continuously on the inner work to make sure that I was aligned with my higher self so that I could then get the guidance or the person who needed to come and help me. And so it wasn't a passive thing, although at times it feels so passive because you're just waiting, for the exact right moment when that guidance is going to come in or that money's going to show up, and you don't know, and it can be very, so along the way, I was facing the deepest fears, like with authority, overstaying my visa, not by my own choice, believing again and again. And it was so ironic because my sister was a Border Patrol agent, and I could hear her giggling back there, because it just worked out that I couldn't leave the country when I was supposed to leave. And then I would have to face authority. And then this just went on and on and on for years of all this crazy, crazy ride. And people were like, what are you doing? And why are you doing this? And like, it's not me doing anything. But it was like, I would get in the most sticky situations that anyone could imagine. And then I could not have gotten into it by myself, nor could I have gotten out of it by myself. And then it would just go poof, and it was gone. So it was kind of like that ring of fear, walking through the ring of fear. I really lived the Course in Miracles. I lived in my defenselessness, my safety life. I mean, defenselessness doesn't mean that you let people walk on you or anything like that. It's just that you don't, they say the healed mind doesn't plan. And I really lived that. I didn't have any defenses in the world. I didn't have money, no money saved or anything. My family was mostly passed on. I didn't have the things of this world that give you power. And yet, so it wasn't just about the money, because then I was guided into places where people were misusing their power, and then guided, now you need to speak up about what you see happening here. So I would sit for weeks and weeks before I would say anything, because I didn't want to be coming from ego, like my anger, my judgment, my wounded self, and or other people's wounded selves. Like a lot of times it was what they were doing to other people, or not horrendous things necessarily, but very not aligned with the direction that the universe is going, which is love and expansion and knowing that we are all one. And so then I would, and so I kind of had to let anger come up, but it wasn't egoic anger. It was just anger, like, no, and fiery energy. And then I'd march into wherever it was and speak up, and then 99% of the time I would then get thrown out. And then 5 minutes later, an angel would pop up, and onward I'd go. And it was like, but I knew it was like kind of this journey of, because the guides had explained to me, you're going to see in the outer world your own limiting belief systems, but not just you as an individual. Like, you understand the sonship, right? In the Course in Miracles, they call it the sonship. The limiting belief systems of all of us as a collective. You're going to see it as if it's outside of you, but it's not really outside of you. So it's a game that you have to play where you're, I'm forgiving what I think I see in this world over and over and over and over, but at the same time being very powerful on the outer level to say, no, I'm sorry, no, this is unacceptable, and here's why. Not in a nasty way, it was just more like Jesus and the money changers, like, no, sorry. Because you're only talking to yourself anyway, other parts of yourself. And they said, what this will do is it will bring all these separated parts back into wholeness within you. And I could feel it, like every time I would go through kind of one of these crazy things, there'd be a physical release. You could feel it in the physical body. And then less fear, less fear, less fear, less fear. And so a lot of us hold these fears, especially about authority coming and taking something away from us. Also, fear of attack. I want to talk about protection. Protection is a myth. Okay, you cannot protect yourself because there's nothing really to protect yourself from. And so I really learned this, that, in the Tao Te Ching, it says, you no longer fear or believe in an outer authority, a much greater inner authority appears. And I definitely had that experience because I was faced with all this outer authority trying to, no, you can't be in this country. I'm like, look, I know I can't be at the wrong place at the wrong time. It's impossible. So we have to learn, I think, all of us, because one of the biggest problems on the planet is that we think we have to protect, this is our country, that's your country over there, and don't you dare take our resources because then we don't have them. This is the biggest myth that exists. Because if we are all one, which we are, and if we are source, which we are, Jesus said, I and my Father are one. That's true for all of us. So I know it doesn't seem that way, but that's because the belief systems, and the guides explained, you have belief systems that are limiting. That is the 100% the main thing that has to be. It's like removing the blocks to love. It's the belief systems, and they said a lot of them are hidden in your subconscious. You don't even know they're there. So when they come up in front of you, it seems like it's another person. But as we know, of course, it isn't. It's not really. They're just playing the part. So again and again, I would be faced with these just like really, not nice treatment and not nice things. And then I would do the forgiveness of it, but still be very powerful. And then I saw that, like, you cannot experience what you are not a vibrational match to. So some people say, yeah, but I'm constantly meditating, I'm high vibe, why would I then experience A, B, and C? It's like, well, because, what you see on the surface is not all it is. There's, underneath in your subconscious and also from other lifetimes, you have certain fears and judgments that are there. So that's why they come up, so that you can then heal them and forgive yourself for believing in anything other than the ultimate and what God is. But it's okay. It's not blame. It's just so. But if you keep working on these things, then the journey gets lighter and lighter. It's like that's how it's been for me. It's like an upward spiral. And sometimes you'll go around the dark side of the moon again, and you're like, I thought I already was done with this. No, it's less intense this time, but you're coming around it again because you want to make sure. And so, but if you keep working on that and you keep bringing love is just acceptance, really. Unconditional love is like you're accepting that this is my creation, and I'm accepting, it's acceptance, it's surrender, but not in a let everybody walk on me kind of way. It's actually the opposite of that, because most people fear having to take a stand. And I didn't want to. I mean, I would have chewed my right arm off and said some of the things that I said, but you have to be, strong and speak your truth. And that's one of the hardest things that there is to do. So many people are going to face some of these things, and they think, see, my worst fear, and there it is, so it must be true. It's like, no, step back, realize that it's just that you have a fear about it, and so it's coming up to be loved and healed and brought back into wholeness. But, people like they lock they have to have alarms on their house and locks, and I, the friend that I'm staying with here, oh God, she's a beautiful, amazing being, and we're total soul sisters, but she was like, oh, well, we have to lock the door, and I kind of said, well, can I suggest something? And I said, in the Tao Te Ching, it says, those who are aligned with the Tao, the way of the universe, the infinite oneness, have no locks, yet nothing can be taken from them. So can we, and she got it immediately. I said, oh, yeah, let me contemplate that. She's like, you're right. I said, you cannot experience what you're not the vibrational frequency of. Like if you are predominantly in a higher frequency, you're not going to attract someone coming in your house and taking something or attacking you. It's only when you really believe these things that you can draw them in. So that's not to say it might not happen, because for somebody, might have that experience, but it's only because they believe somewhere in them that it's true and that it can be harmed. So obviously you want to work through your things, use your locks. If you need to use them, it's okay. But point being that the ultimate truth is those locks is a myth. You don't need that. And what you need is to work through your limiting belief systems and to bring love to every single one of them, and also speak your truth when you need to. And then you become lighter and lighter, and much less of these type of attack things would happen. Do you want to make a comment or a question, anybody?
I was planning to say something. So I think that it's really remarkable that you're stating what I've been also getting. After we had a conversation already, and I also got more information.
Oh.
We really are called to speak our mind, because that demonstrates the power of our will, and that's something that Spirit is insistent on, that our will is sacrosanct.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean be nasty, and obviously there's a level of power, because if you're nasty, then you're not giving your power. But the guides had said to me, because I asked, if you do something that causes another person pain, like, is that bad? They said there are those things that you would choose to do that would give someone else pain, but that is their limitation to work through. But obviously, if you're doing something that's not aligned with your truest being and that causes pain, that's a different thing. But if you, like, let's say you decide to leave, like I did, leave my marriage, leave a relationship, leave a job, whatever, because you feel that it's done, and somebody else gets upset, well, sorry, but that's on them to work through their own limitation. Yeah. So I would recommend not speaking anything until you've sat with it for quite a while, though, to make sure that it's actually not just coming from a lower will, kind of, I'm a victim, you did this to me type of energy. Because then it doesn't have any power. But if you come from your higher self, like, yes, this needs to be spoken, because is it loving to allow someone to walk all over you and treat you badly, or treat someone else, bully someone? I mean, I had several things that involved bullying. Is it loving to do that? And the answer is no, it's not loving. But, use your guidance. Some moments you have to step back, and maybe you don't. Sometimes you don't do anything. You just observe. It just depends. You got to decide what hill you want to die on, or, what battle you're going to pick. But sometimes, like
the speaking up, this urge that you need to be able to speak your mind is there for a reason. And yes, of course, you need to listen to your heart and to your whole being. But if you don't speak your mind, you are ignoring your power. So you need to speak your mind with discernment, of course, as you said. But it's not healthy not to speak your mind at all. And so it's better to speak your mind, even if it's wrong or bad what you're saying, than not to, according to Spirit. That's how I got it. So prefer you make a mistake and speak your mind when it was wrong, not good, than that you give up speaking your mind, or speaking out, or being open about who you are and what you believe and how you see things at a certain time. So you need to come from where you are at, and yes, use your discernment, and it's always good to ask for guidance before you go rushing out and so on. But yes, it still is not good to not use your free will. That's what I was getting. It's important to use your free will, because that enables Spirit to give you things to do, because you will also use your will to fulfill them.
That's brilliant. And it's true. It's, there's, like you say, there's discernment that has to happen. And even if you do make a mistake, there's not really anything such thing as a mistake, but if you operate from a lower will, it's just that what will come back will mirror that. And then you'll have to sit with it and go, was that really like the right thing? And it's okay because there's not really any right or wrong. But I think one of the biggest fears people have is actually speaking up and having to make themselves uncomfortable and make other people feel uncomfortable. And yet, through this entire journey, that's all I was doing. And I mean, I'm like, can you get me out of this? I'm so tired, because it just seems like it's gone on forever. And I've had these long stretches of very loving people helping me along and stuff. And then I could feel it coming. It'd be a circumstance where, like, oh, this is one of those ones. And I knew it wasn't going to end fluffy cloud, lovey-dovey. It's going to be me speaking up and then probably getting thrown out, which could happen, which is what happened normally, because people don't want to be confronted with their anything, And I didn't want to do it either, but the guidance was just so clear. Like, I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure that I need to say this? Because I didn't want to. And the thing is, if I didn't, the situation would get worse and worse and worse. So that if the situation gets worse and worse, that's telling you something. If maybe you can work within your own being and bring forgiveness forward and recognize that this person is doing the best they can, okay, and that kind of smooth things out and you move along. But if it gets worse and worse, then there's something that maybe you have to speak up about and say. And yeah, so one of my biggest fears was to be in a homeless shelter, and then lo and behold, of course, I spent some time in a homeless shelter where they were really, really misusing their power, and I knew the minute I got there why I was there, because it was going to be one of those experiences where I was going to have to say something, but yet I was doing it as one of these people, because at that moment I didn't have any money, had nothing to back me up, and they were treating these people very, very badly. I mean, for example, the restaurants in the area would donate food, really nice, good food, and it would not make it to the people because the staff would eat it, and then we were fed to slop. I have pictures. People going, what is that? It was so nasty. And it was just a lot of really bad treatment. And, and they do it in the name of Jesus, So I was, so I was really going, and I kept thinking, hold your peace, observe. So I'm observing, going, can I just go? Like, nope. So then finally I marched into one morning I just went ballistic. I'm like, that's it. And the guides had told me that I had suppressed anger for many lifetimes. And so in this lifetime, I had given myself opportunities where I could really express rage just for the expression. Because when I was younger, I was always told, be quiet, just be quiet, So I wasn't being quiet. I was like, no, I was so angry. And the other homeless people, oh, Elizabeth, you have to be quiet. I mean, we know you're angry, but you don't have, I said, you can't do this. You don't have, the hell I can't. I don't care what happens. I was so mad, but not really mad. You know what I mean? Like at a deeper level, it wasn't mad, but it was just that flame fire coming through. And then, they called me into the captain office and like, what's your problem? And I'm like, here's my problem. And I laid it out. I said, have you ever heard of Matthew 25:35? I told the story of moving at the gas pump. Matthew 25:35 in the Bible was when Jesus said, I was a stranger, you took me in. I was hungry, you fed me. And they said, I was naked, you clothed me. And they said, well, Master, when did we do these things for you? And he said, what you do unto the least of my brothers, you do unto the brothers and sisters, you do unto me. And he didn't mean least like they were less than or something. He meant least because they had the least. And I said, well, I and these other people are Jesus' brothers and sisters who at this moment happen to have the least. And you are not treating us like Jesus' brothers and sisters. I mean, isn't that basic? It's basic, right? Oh, okay, Of course it turned into a big thing and they ended up throwing me out and whatever. So, but I mean, it wasn't for ego aggrandizement that I did that, because I would have much rather just left and gone on my merry way. But it was like, nope, this is why you're here. This is what you're doing. And thankfully, I have a personality that's very feisty and fiery, as so was my sister. And so, yeah, I kind of had to bring up that Jesus and the money changers kind of like, no. And, I knew the whole time. I'm like, forgiving the world what I think I see. I forgive these people for who they are not. I forgive myself for my projections continuously. So it's an interesting game that you have to play to deal with the outer misuses of power powerfully, and then also be knowing that it's not really who they are. And later I wrote, this man helped me when because I was in, 3 homeless shelters I got thrown out of, one by 4 police officers, because I just simply said, is this really what Jesus would do? And that was not appreciated. It wasn't what Jesus would do, believe me, what they were doing. And then, but the third one, this man helped. I was guided. Okay, I'm just walking in the middle of the night with my suitcase. They just threw me out at night into the street. It was a very bad area. Again, illusion and all that, but still, I don't really have fears about bad areas and all that. But so I'm walking along, and then this man ended up helping me. And then later he said, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, yes, I'd like to write a letter. I felt guided. So it was a certain area in Tennessee where all they had there was like churches and homeless shelters. And it was very toxic and dysfunctional the way it was. And I wrote a letter saying, this is what happened to me in your homeless shelters. And I said, I forgive you because you know not what you were doing. I can use their own biblical scriptures. I said, but this is not going to fly in higher consciousness of this planet. And I just sent the letter. So again, it's just more about me, because one of the things about it is shifting the balance of power. That's what I was doing. And when I shift the balance of power, it affects everyone because we are one. So like, I didn't have money. I really literally did not have any money when that's why I was in that place. I didn't have really any family. I mean, I have family, my brother, but he's very intentionally off on his own journey. I didn't have anything that we normally have in the world to back me up, and yet I was speaking very powerfully. And so that shifts the balance of power from, in this world, if you have power, that means you have money, and you have possessions, and you have family. And I didn't have that, so it was like shifting the balance of power away from those things. That we are powerful just by who we and what we are, and we have the right, as you said, and the free will choice to say, no, this is not acceptable. I'm not going to accept it, and you can throw me out. So, I would get thrown out, and then within never more than maybe an hour, some answer would come in. Some person would show up. I called them my angels. Some money. Yeah, so I was okay. Nothing bad could touch me. And, so, do you want to have any questions or comments, anybody?
Yeah, so I would like to go into some of the things that you describe in your book, how your sister would contact you and make it clear to you that she was still there for you, and how she made it clear that spirit is guiding you, because that's how you got to this place where you could go forth and trust in your journey.
Well, I would have to say that it's not actually really about my sister, but yes, that was the starting point. I mean, I say I and my sister are one, but I get what you're saying. I mean, basically, it's like, because we're twins, so there's obviously a very, very, very strong connection, and one leaving the body has no really, well, it's the same with everyone, but we had that. And so when she came to me in dreams, and, it was more, I think it was almost more about the higher, it was like masters and angelic presence that were, and, my own higher self that really was what was fueling it. But her whole reason for living and dying was this journey that I was going to undertake, and that she was going to lead the way into it, and then she was going to go. And I've had, in the beginning, I had readings with like psychic mediums. And at first I was terrified because when when I got married, my husband was Catholic. I'd always been very drawn to Catholicism. My father had been Catholic, my mother not. And so I became Catholic. And then, there's all these things that it's bad that if you use a medium or you communicate with spirits or whatever. So I was really terrified. But then it was like I was so compelled to go. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just, they're just being an intermediary. Now I don't really need intermediaries, but at the time, so we'd go to these meetings and they would just say, wow, wow, like, well, your sister, she played her part. And in the very beginning, they said, when your sister is around you, you will see blue wings. Mostly it would be like blue butterflies, as you can see behind me my friend has blue butterflies all over her house, or blue angels, wings, and that's just her symbol. And so, of course, immediately these blue butterflies are everywhere. And so I saw the blue butterflies, and then they said, your mother, so my mother had passed in 1986, your mother and your sister are here. My father died after my sister, 2006. But they said they had to go so that you could shine as an individual. That was the plan. And that made sense. Somehow it made sense to me. But anyway, I think one of the mediums said, the role that she's playing right now is that she's connecting you up to all these other consciousnesses, the other, she's playing that part. So, because I wrote this book, Twin Souls, A Message of Hope for the New Millennium, by Elizabeth Van Hill with Catherine Berryhill. I felt that she was very much involved. The whole first part of it was our story, and the second part was what's the message. Now, granted, the message probably changed a lot now because that book was completed in 2006 and 7, but it was the precursor, setting the groundwork for the journey that I was then to undertake. But a lot of it, most of it still holds true. But so she was like playing the connection role, and she was there. She came to me in dream state, like the very first time that she came in. The movie, I think it's The Shining, where the TV is all, and then the little girl comes into the TV, and it's like static. Maybe you haven't seen it, but it's said that mediums, people who are mediums, they're like the telephone link between us and the spirit world. It's like they feel a sense of staticky kind of, because they're at a much higher frequency, the spirit is. And so they have to lower their frequency, and then the medium has to raise the frequency so that they can meet and communicate. And so I knew that, and I knew the staticky thing. And so I was a police dispatcher. I was a 911 dispatcher. So in my dream, I had my headset on, and I was dispatching away. And then all of a sudden, I heard this really high, scratchy, staticky sound. And I knew immediately, oh, that's Kathy coming in. It's like she was lowering. And I could hear it, that she was down, lower. And then it was her voice. And she said, it's not scary at all, being deaf. She said, it's not scary at all. And then she said, I'm in my favorite place. So beautiful here. I'm in my favorite place. And then, I just woke up, there were tears pouring down my face. It was definitely not a dream. It was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. And then she came through several times, and then also I started having dreams, like I told you, with all these blue lights and people saying things like, there's a message, and you're the one to deliver it, type of thing. And, but she just kind of made her presence known all the way, especially with the blue butterflies. Like when I landed in this Salvation Army in Tennessee, I was absolutely terrified because I'm sitting in this lobby. What I didn't know was a lot of the people that were in the lobby, they didn't stay at the Salvation Army. They were the real hardcore homeless people. God bless them, but a lot of them were drugged out. And I'm sitting there with my big suitcase, my leather jacket, and my laptop, sitting in this lobby being waited to see if they even had a bed, for me. And I was terrified. What? I must have failed that I'm end up here, And I looked to my right, there's a blue butterfly, huge blue butterfly on the wall. So that was there to show me, nope, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Hang on, hang on, hang on. And then this woman who was like, she had the little black braids, and she came right up, got you a bed. I'm like, oh, yippee, because I really didn't want to be there, but I was like, oh, thank you. So anyway, my sister, she just always made her presence known. But over time, I don't really experience it, though, now as my sister coming in. You know what I mean? Like they say, I am my father or one, I am my sister one. Not to say that they don't still have individuality, but it's almost like her and I became one. Like I became her, kind of. People have said that, like you were very different, and then you kind of, she was always talking about spirit and all these things, and then you started being that way. And so I kind of like became her, but she makes it known that she is there. And is that is that answer your question, or would you like to know more?
Yeah, it's a good thing to reflect on how this came about, because now you are having a different experience where you have this that spirit is with you at all times, and you can tap into that resource at any moment or at every moment, or are doing it automatically most of the time, I suspect. So yeah, it looks like someone has a comment. Wait a second.
Okay. Yay.
Hey, thank you for sharing. And I know, I know Elizabeth. I've been with her 2 years, and it's an incredible journey. I have a question, and I see that for a lot of people, it's difficult to listen to spirit, to their true self. And they get really caught up in what other people say, and there's lots of fear, and it's really difficult to listen to that, that voice, that inner voice, and not get caught up in other voices and other opinions. And what you say has been helpful to follow your true self, your spirit, and not all the noise out there. What's been helpful to really connect inward and know this is my path, and this is for me. Can you share something about that?
Yes. Thank you, Carol. That's my friend Carol. I tell you, this woman is amazing. She's really amazing because she has taken on some really deep challenges of trauma in her life, and she's taken it on, and she's doing so well with it. But yes, it's true that because certain conditioning, she has very strong, much more than me. She's had in her life very strong conditioning. She's from Germany. I'm not making any statements about that, but it's there's this culture there that's very there's authority, people who are authority, and you must follow them. So she's been very, in her case particularly, that, and this is in many places, all over the world really, that there's somebody outside of you that knows better. And so this is very deeply programmed into us that we can't possibly trust ourselves. So I think it starts with just practices. I mean, when we studied the Course in Miracles, I was telling Carol the other day, I read a thing about Amma, Amma, A-M-M-A, she's the Indian saint, that her students that she has like in her ashram, she doesn't have them study any non-duality, no Advaita Vedanta, no, of course, Miracles is very similar to that, and all that, until they've spent years doing practices like meditation, mantra, soothing the body, soothing the nervous system, because what will naturally happen when you get, so like with Carol, I'm always saying, Carol, do the things that soothe your body and soothe your mind, uplift you, gentle, loving things, because then naturally, there'll be these sudden glimpses of like, oh, I'm not even this limited body. So the Course in Miracles is one of the most powerful teachings of this century, and I highly recommend it. However, sometimes it's taken a little too literally. I mean, we did come to be human, and we did come to have some of these experiences, and you can't escape them by saying, oh, it's all an illusion. No, you have to get down and in and really go into it. So I recommend to all people to find ways that spend your time not focusing on, as as much as you can. Like, of course, I'm on Facebook and all these things, but I mean, I spend many, many hours of my day by myself. I can barely survive without that. I exercise in nature. It's heaven on earth to exercise in nature and meditation. And I do breathing exercises. My whole morning is that. And maybe some people have to work. I get that, but you can somehow integrate things that uplift you. Because if you're focusing, if the first thing you do in your morning is start listening to the news and reading the newspaper and blah, 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 immediately you're going to lose it. How you start your day is extraordinarily important in how you end your day. So even if you don't have the time, you can take 5 minutes, take a deep breath, sit down. You know, the visualization that I use is a still mountain lake. Like if you were in the mountains and there's this big lake and it's ultra still. It's so still that at night there's billion stars and the moon, it reflects in the lake almost as if it is the same, you know, it's like a direct reflection. It's like kind of that kind of symbolic of, so, you know, so what is it? So above, so below, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's a direct, so you're so still, you're that lake. You're so still that things can, the beauty of the universe can reflect. So I think that people spend too much time in their minds, like, oh, I have to figure this out. No, you're not going to do it that way. You have to put your focus on things that uplift you, and even studying things like A Course in Miracles has its place. Very powerful, very important at the right moment, and you'll be guided. But any kind of book or teaching, I think, is secondary to your own being, your own. If you love to run, if you love to garden, if you do the things that uplift you and calm your nervous system, because a lot of people are dealing with massive trauma. Calm yourself. I guess I'm repeating myself, but there's really always the same answer. If you try to go, well, what is God? And I have to somehow find him or her. Forget all of that, because it's not going to work. You are that at your core, but even that kind of scares some people because they're like, well, I'm God, then that means I'm all alone. It's like, no. I mean, God is within you. God is all around you. But it just depends on where you're at in your journey. But like, there's so many people going through massive trauma. I see it all over Facebook. My journey has, comes a little bit of trauma in me, but I don't. It doesn't really stick. It didn't really stick with me. But some people have gone through very complex trauma, and they can't just bypass it. Like, oh, it's all an illusion. No, you have to make yourself feel safe. And Carol you can speak to this, and I'll let you have a chance. She's learning, how does she make herself feel safe? Because it's really about, if you have trauma, you are safe. And I always use the mantra, I am safe and all is well because I am one. Meaning, there's not really a separated world where people are going to come, it's really that we are one on a higher level. At least that suits me. Might not suit somebody else. So I don't know. Does that answer the question? Is there more to say about that, Caro and Monaco?
Yeah, it answers the question. Thank you. And what you said, like when there's trauma, you can't just bypass that and say there is nobody feeling the trauma, this illusion, just skip it. Like that's
No.
It's almost like an act of aggression towards yourself. This is not real. Get over it. Get out of it. Like there are moments when you genuinely see, oh, it's not real, and you can go beyond. But those are rare, I find, for me. A lot of times when it's really felt in the body, I have to deal with that level. And then when there's a cluster cleared out, then I go up, but it seems like it's a necessary layer. Sometimes it needs to be worked through. And even if it's an illusion, but we are living the illusion. And, it's important to be loving and gentle to ourselves and not say, yeah, just get out of it. This is not real. Like that's not love. Like what you said, it's not loving to let others, walk all over you. You think that's loving towards them, but is it really loving towards them? And also it's damaging to yourself. One of the things I always got was it's important to love yourself and the other, and it's all one, and it's equal. It's not, oh, they can do whatever they want to you. So yeah, thanks for for answering this. And yeah, it's surely quite a journey for so many of us here. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And anytime speak up, Carol, because I'm telling you, people, Carol is an amazing being. And she's so connected. I mean, when she gets into that higher state, she's multidimensional. She's like, but because she took on so much trauma when she came in, my God, I mean, it's very challenging for her, because she's got so many voices on the outside saying so yeah, and a lot of people have that. Like people who maybe aren't where we are, what we're talking about. That some people might, very lovingly and jokingly call them muggles because they're not, they don't know anything about what we're talking about. And so they think that they know what's best for you, but they don't. And you can't take it. You can't take that on. You want to say something, Monaco, for that?
You need to bring your concerns, what's going on inside of you, bring it to light. Without that, you are stuck. So it's like just address what's going on for you, the way you think it is playing out. So it's really important to look at it and allow whatever fears come up or thoughts come up to be there, and at the same time to let this shift. Because in A Course in Miracles, it explains it when you come to God with all your grievances, all the things that are in your mind about what's wrong, what's bad, and so on, God will dismiss the case against you, but with good reason. It's your attacks on yourself or on the world are not justified, but you don't know that, right? Until God dismisses it for you in a way that where you feel it, where you know it's true. And so it's important to bring it there and to present it and to allow that to play out, because without that, you will not notice that the case has been dismissed against you already.
I like that imagery because at one point I had to face a court in Hong Kong, because I had overstayed my visa because it was helping somebody. And I think we told the story before, but it was like, we in this world we believe in guilt and judgment and all these things, and what we kind of have made God in our own image instead of the other way around. But I think I like that the way they say that because it's kind of personified, but in some ways I think people get caught up in like God is a being, and in some senses God can be a being, but God really, what do I know more than anybody else? But it seems to me that God is. In the interview, I asked that question. It was like, well, God isn't. Well, they said it's an energy. So it's an energy. It's the energy of life itself. It's love. So it's not really like we think of, or in the past we thought of God as like Santa Claus in the sky throwing down thunderbolts and judging us. That's not God. We are God. I mean, when in the interview they said, they kept talking about remembrance, and I said, well, what is it that we are remembering? There was this pause, and they said, that you are God. Now, it depends on how you view God as to whether that statement really offends you. But if you replace the word God with like life, or life itself, or love, you are love, you are life. Actually, there's only one. And even in Buddhism, they talk about they don't even have God. They just use consciousness. That everything is consciousness. And so you are consciousness, right? I mean, when you say, and this is, I love like Ramana Maharshi when he would say, "Who am I?" That question is so profound, and his journey really struck me because he just asked, "Who am I?" And if I can ask that question, then I must not be this thing that I'm seeing. And he just went into being, and that was it. I mean, not all of us are going to do that, but he was just one with being, and it was in pure bliss. And so being outside of the mind is where the bliss is, and the mind is like blah, 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 constantly. But yeah, so at the core of who we are is God, meaning we are life, we are love, we are awareness itself. We're not this character called Elizabeth. We're not this character called Monaco, but we are playing it like a play, and you're playing that part, and you need to get right on into it. You don't bypass it and like, well, I'm not Monaco really, so I'm not going to be in the play. No, you are. You're going to play your part, like you say, your function, your purpose. But I just don't want people to get like a notion of God as outside of themselves, which I don't think that's what it means. But
It's
when you
actually
actually
it's actually from within. The
from within,
God
yes,
the symbology of God that I was speaking of is that you bring it out, and there's this knowingness within you that will show you what is actually going on, and that is
yes,
higher than any attacks that you may accrue against someone else, against yourself, against the world, against whatever your thoughts or other people's, what you think are other people, whatever. You bring that all up, and there is something within you that has an answer for that, that shows you that you are whole, that you are innocent, that you are complete, that you are holy, and so on. But you can only get that answer by facing it. You cannot
yes,
bypass it, because then you will not receive that answer. You can't say, "Oh, yes, I'm innocent," and then ignore what's coming up and say, "I'm innocent. I'm innocent. This isn't real," right? You have to
yes,
face it. You have to say, "Okay, this is what I'm thinking about myself. This is what I feel. This is how I'm perceiving things. This is what I think the other person did. This is how I interpret it." Blah 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 blah. Right? Everything. And the forgiveness is to actually, when you realize that none of that actually happened, so to speak, in A Course in Miracles terms. It
yes,
never was the way you thought it was from the beginning.
right, right, and you know, we take the. I don't know if you've ever heard. I'm just kind of going with what's coming into my mind. Like there's a woman named Kristen Kirk, and she was on Blue the Gas Club, and she can see multidimensionally. So like she sees herself as the character, and then she sees she's at one in the soul level, which is a much more expanded level, and then she kind of like is at one, the oneness kind of level, so to speak, and then there's the level of non-being, like being and non-being, like complete um, emptiness, potentialities, and she embodies all of that simultaneously. So you can be on one level at one with all that is, you are, and you can even be nothing, complete nothing. She said people might think that that's scary. She said, "Oh my God, you're just like, he's like, I just experienced myself as stars and oh, and then soul and then human." So it's like that's how the guides described it, like tears. It's ultimately all one thing, but it's breaking itself down into different experiences and different levels. So, someone could have had an experience in their childhood, like they were beaten or raped or whatever, terrible, terrible things, and that's very hard to be like, you know, that's innocent. But one of the things that brought me to this journey was this book called Your Soul's Gift and Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz. Glenna Dietrich, the channel, was one of the main channels in his first book, and that's how I knew about her. But if you talk about on a soul level, that's not, we're coming down the tiers. The soul level, which is a very expanded whole level, but it's still an expansion. It's still, growing and expanding, whereas oneness is just oneness. There's no, but that level come together and we make all these soul agreements. Now, that doesn't mean it's set in stone. It means that it's a blueprint. Like, if this happens, then maybe that. And then the choices that you make, is going to determine what experiences you will have in this particular. Now, it's so complex because, so you have to understand, like, people go, but how come I have this thing happening? Like, well, there are soul agreements. And you think, well, why would I take that on? Well, there's a higher reason for it. And then also, though, there's things that you can maybe just attract to yourself over and over and over again. You're judging and fearing the thing. that's another, then it can just show up. So there's so many like layers to it, but in the end result, you just have to relax and accept and calm yourself and connect. Because it's a very multidimensional thing, and it's complex and absolutely simple at the same time. You know, that's the interesting dichotomy. Because like Bashar, you know who Bashar is, I think. He's this being that's channeled through Daryl Anka. It's like his future self, 300 years in the future, and he's like an extraterrestrial, which to me means nothing. The Earth is only one minuscule experience. And anyway, so his wisdom, I think, is very updated wisdom and very cutting edge. But anyway, he talks about how there's infinite number of parallel realities, an infinite number of parallel Earths all simultaneously. So he says you don't even change the Earth that you're on, you just change yourself, and then suddenly you're into another parallel dimension of Earth. And so I think, and he says, you know, that's why there seems to be movement, because you're moving billions of times per second in many different planes of reality, and that gives a sense of movement. You know, we have this sense of third dimension and movement. So, point being, like, people asking the question, yeah, but you know, this thing is happening on the Earth, and what am I supposed to? And he's like, which Earth are you talking about? You know, being kind of, you know, cheeky, but you know, there isn't just one thing happening. Like, there isn't just one. This is the Earth, this is the world, and that's it. No, it's like Muji says, there's one Earth in 7.7 billion worlds, meaning we all are playing in our own kind of projected world. And so, point being that there's a lot of complexities, and sometimes you don't understand why you would have taken something or why it's happening. But it all comes back down to what you said. Bring it internally to your own higher source. And it's like so basic and simple, but yet not. To bring it in and say, what would you have me? What do I do with this? But you cannot bypass it. That's absolutely true. So, do you want to add something to that?
No shortcuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do save time though by doing that in the ultimate sense, but it's not a shortcut.
But it's like Abraham Hicks calls it the source shortcut. Like, instead of, you know, rehashing everything that happened, I mean, sometimes you do need to do that. You need to maybe go to a therapist, but if you can go directly to source, that's going to cut out a whole lot of BS, right? Of course. So, you know, it's an interesting game. And Bashar, when he describes it, and I think this really is aligned with the Course in Miracles, he says it's like you go into this room and it's a virtual reality, like you're still in spirit, and you go into this, whatever, you put on your virtual reality glasses, that suddenly you are now, it's like a video game, suddenly you're now a character in a third dimensional world. You put on your human, and there's other humans doing the same, but we each have our own video game, and then you're the main character, and you're taking that consciousness and putting it into the main character, like seeing the world. And there's all these other characters, but actually you as a soul are also, you know, moving them and making them as you're a version of them, he says. And so you never really even left. And this third dimensional thing is like just put it on, and you're just like but the experience, like the guide said, the experience is real. So you can't, they said nothing should be dishonored. You know, because there are parts of the Course in Miracles where I was really confused, like, you know, the body represents what you hate, and the world is nothing, and don't, you know, I think that those are somehow mistranslations or misunderstandings, because this body is an amazing vehicle for the spirit, and they said if you dishonor anything in this realm, that's a huge mistake. Nothing is to be dishonored. It's just, and they said, okay, that which is in the illusion supports that which is in your soul. And it's extremely important, this illusion, this game. And you have not discovered the meaning yet. There's layers upon layers of meaning and importance that you haven't even discovered yet. So we're not so quick. They said, don't be so quick to think, okay, it's an illusion. I'm done. I'm out of here. Sorry, I tried that one many times. It doesn't work. You know,
No.
like in the way of mastery, they say it's not about escaping up and out. It's about getting down and in and
Yeah.
walking with your feet flat on the ground and, yeah, get into it. Get into the nitty-gritty.
A Course in Miracles says that the body is sole purpose is communication. And
Yes.
communication is the means to remember our oneness, our wholeness,
Yes.
remembering who we are. So that's, and in the Course in Miracles, relationships are so important. So seeing
They
your
are.
brother as, or sister or siblings as holy, and
Mhm.
changing your mind about them, right?
Yes.
And that is what A Course in Miracles calls forgiveness as well, right? Is that it's actually changing your mind about what you see and allowing that
Right.
to happen from a perspective of choosing the sane mind, or the one that can see love everywhere and remove the barriers to the awareness of love's presence.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's just that some of it, like I know people that have taken that concept very literally to the point of being extremely detrimental to them. So it's just like, okay, nothing is to be dishonored. Not the body. I mean, you know, ultimately, if we're just in a virtual reality and if maybe it doesn't really exist in the ultimate structure of reality, maybe, but it does exist relatively, and it's a very important thing. And you have to take care of your body. That's self-love. And if you eat a
Yes.
food and it doesn't feel good, you can be like, well, because I've tried this, believe me. There's a lot of things I can't eat, and I really want to eat them. And so they're like, well, I mean, it can't be real. And then I do it again, and then I feel terrible. So it's like, you just got to go with what is. And as I've done this journey, I have seen healing in some of the areas and things that I couldn't do. But literally every moment is actually a new moment. This is another thing. Time, it's part of the human journey, you know. But time is fear. I heard Matt Kahn say time is fear because the guide told me this, whenever you stretch into the past or the future, you will feel fear. And even when you think the present moment it's more like it's just the eternal now. So if I did something or I said something, which I often do, like I'm like, oh God, why did I say that? And then I'll ruminate about it for 2 days. And it's like, but now I'm like, nope, because it's a new moment. It's gone. I forgive myself. I forgive the projections of this. It's gone. I'm done. And I have this visualization that I use rose petals in the wind. It's just like, whew, gone. And it's so freeing. I don't beat myself up anymore. Like, oh man, and now this person's going to think this. And I didn't meet, no. You get a whole new, every moment is fresh and new. And you're in a new universe, all these, it's not what it, and when people get really caught up in like what's happening in the world and they get really mad at me because I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want to watch this. You have to know what's going on. And I'm like, I'm with Bashar. Where is it going on? I don't choose that earth. I choose to put my focus on where I want to be. And that doesn't mean you ignore something if it's right in your face. If you're in the Ukraine or you're a government, like I'm using the Ukraine as an example, then you do what you can do. And if there's something that you can do, your soul will guide you to do it, right? Like I was in these homeless shelters and I was guided to do it. But otherwise, I mean, what good is it to lament and lament and lament and say, I can't be at peace because the world's not at peace? It's like, well, the world is just an outpicturing of the inner. So it's pointless. Give yourself a break. Let yourself be free and innocent. If you made a mistake or you think you did, forgive yourself and then let it float away like rose petals in the wind. It's gone. You have a whole new moment. And that has helped me, gosh, so much because, I feel like, I messed that up. And it's, who cares? It's gone. And then, and I heard Abraham, I like Abraham makes, and the person was saying like, some relationship thing, like my girlfriend just won't let this go, something I did. And they're like, well, what's actually happening is that you haven't let it go. You just keep replaying it in your mind, and so she's just mirroring that back. So it's such a game because you think the worst thing that could happen, this person is mirroring to you, but it actually has to do with you. It's like going up to a mirror and being like, trying to change the mirror. It's like, no, you have to change the image that you're putting into the mirror. It's a tricky game. But it's a game. It is a game. Right, Monica?
Yeah. What I was going to say is that there's this thing about conscience. I always thought conscience was to guilt trip myself, right? Then I would act better in the future. And of course, the miracle says the opposite. You need to let go of guilt in order to be able to act kind and gentle and truthfully and honestly and lovingly. And that is such a change of perspective. And it takes looking at everything and changing your mind about one thing after the other to actually experience the benefits of that change, that shift of how you see things.
Yeah, it's like letting yourself off the hook. We're so hard on ourselves, and this is another thing the guy said. You think something has gone wrong, and people are so very hard on themselves. And it's just not that serious. I know it seems serious, but really none of this is serious. That's why I'm like always kind of happy-go-lucky about things, because I know this is all a play. It doesn't mean that I'm dismissing it. No, I'm down and in it as far as you're going to get. I mean, I feel like I'm a foot soldier in this craziness, but I mean, it's come on, lighten up. I mean, that's what the Shah always says, lighten up. It's not that serious, and any mistake that you perceive you make, okay, you're innocent by divine being. It's like if you said, okay, God, this is the old way of thinking, God made the earth and put you there, and He gave you free will, but if you violate that free will, you're going to hell. Like what that? How does that make any sense? Like if you have the courage, because the guides told me that we are walking, the whole universe is watching what's happening on Earth, and they said absolutely amazed the darkness that you've walked through and that what you have, how far you have come. And this was back in 2008. Didn't think you could get there. So like we are, and the Shah calls them masters of limitation. So it's like, okay, we're going to put on these 3D glasses and we're going to be in this human world and we're going to experience this reality. And then there's this God that's going to say you are going to be punished. No. If you go to see a play and one actor kills another actor, do you then punish that actor when the play is over? No. That's not to say that you let someone, there's rules in this world. If you kill someone, you're going to have to stand trial and all that. But that's not the point. It's like you judging yourself or judging someone else or guilting yourself. It's like, look, this is a play. It's a game. Okay, maybe you did make kind of a mistake that was disconnected from source. So what? Choose again. This is in the way of mastery, probably in the Course of Miracles as well. Just choose again. It's not rocket science. Just say, okay, sometimes you just can't let it go. Caro knows this. Sometimes you just can't get there. Okay. Sometimes you cannot get there. You just got to do your best. Distract yourself. Take a bath. Whatever you need to do. But at some point, you need to just choose again and let it go. And I think people just get so caught up in the stories of the world. And, like, for example, the pandemic. The way I experienced the pandemic, I mean, every single place, I happen to be in England, got quote-unquote stuck there, even though I know I'm never stuck anywhere. Every time I was in a place with woods, I was riding my bike. Like a lot of people experienced it differently than I did. And I think a big part of that is like I'm not going to buy into what I'm seeing on the media, seeing in the outer world. It's like I choose to I had no change in my life. There has been really no change since that pandemic. Now, I know other people it was because they had jobs and, I get it. But for me, I just don't put my focus on what's being said. And, I don't know how to say that. It's not, you are in control of your own world. Your own. So I didn't experience it. Everyone's like, oh God, 2021 was so terrible. 2022, or 2020 and 2021 was so terrible. I'm like, it was? I didn't, and I'm not saying that because I know other people had circumstances that were really, really, really challenging. But my point being is that you don't need to Your experience of the world does not have to be like everybody else. If somebody says, oh, this is the way it is, this is the way it is, you better da 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 da, don't listen to that. You get to decide. You get to decide how you're going to experience something. And even if it's really challenging, you still get to decide. Right, Monaco? You agree with that?
It's a big point, and it's a hard one when you're in the midst of justifying your negative beliefs. so yeah, but it makes sense to learn to at least make some micro choices. If you're not able to make the big ones, maybe you can make some micro choices in which you can feel a little better, right? A little less strained, a little less harsh about things and so on.
Yes.
Yeah, so
well,
many teachers speak of just appreciating the little things. Start with little things.
Good.
But the thing is, in truth, that there's also big things that are there all the time that you can appreciate. And so those need to be appreciated too. So not just the little things, the big things, everything that's there. And what you can't appreciate at that time, and you're going to go through the hard times when you feel that way. And that's what I was saying. We cannot bypass that. When it's there, it's there. You were able to make a different choice about your experience, right? But that isn't the case for everyone at a given time.
Right.
And so we need to accept where we are at in our ways. And of course, when you've shifted at a moment and you're feeling really good, then you see everything differently, right, at that time. But that can shift again. And so the thing is, we need to trust that instant within us that we were speaking of. I said God at some point, but it can be. I also, in one of my podcasts, called it bringing the dream to life, right? So life would be where you bring all these things to, and the dream is what we're experiencing and putting our mind on and believing is real. And then we bring that to the light, to life, to joy, and it can be and then one can see it differently. But it can be a process. It can happen quickly. It's different every time. And healing, for instance, can be immediate, but it can also be something that we need to do the work to get to. Not every forgiveness journey is one that we are willing to make at that particular moment. And so when I'm ready to let go of something, or when I'm willing to forgive or let go of the beliefs that I'm holding on to that, then I get help. Then there's spirit who will immediately shift gears and help me. But I'm not always willing, and I'm willing to acknowledge that I'm not willing in every way at a given time. And I think that's important to accept, because otherwise it's even worse for you. Because you're beating yourself up anyways, plenty of the time. So this shift from guilt trip as salvation to holiness as salvation is really an amazing change of perspective. And it's always choosing in every moment more ways in order to use your power and your power of choice. And if you choose to be unhappy, that's also power. And because that's what I was saying before, Spirit told me, it's important that you use your power of choice. Because that's the only way that you will come to the point where you use it for your happiness, for the happiness of all, for the joy. Because if you're not choosing, if you're avoiding choosing, that is going to be more detrimental than choosing wrongly or choosing something that feels wrong at that time.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I want to make clear that I'm not making light of this pandemic. It's been hell for some people, but I am saying that you can choose to not spend your time focusing on watching the news and riling up the fear inside of you, because what you fear clings to you, and that is the truth. If you fear something, then it's going to come right to you, and I chose not to do that and continue to choose that. So, of course, I mean, I know people who have gone through absolute hell with this thing, and so I'm not making light of it at all. So yes, if you can't get there, that is equally okay. And the guys even said this because I asked them if somebody makes choices and they're miserable because they're not really bringing forth their gifts and they're contracting, and is that a mistake? No. The soul only is a data gatherer. It just wants experience. It doesn't care which one. Like if you make these choices, you'll have these experiences. If you make none of it is judged. So it's perfectly okay if you had a bad experience with this pandemic or with something else. It's okay. It's all okay. And when I walked since 2008 through some of these things, like I know what it's like to be in absolute terror and absolute, like I've done that, and I know just in that particular case in the pandemic, it didn't affect me the way other people, and mainly because I wasn't putting my focus. It's really more about if you need to focus somewhere, do you have to focus on watching but the news is not reality. So I'm just saying, even if you're having a really bad experience with it, make the choice to put your focus towards things that inspire and uplift and soothe you versus how many have died. And this is just such a waste, it's just a waste. So that's all I'm saying. But yes, of course, I validate everybody who's gone through really challenging things with that and anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I was guided to start this podcast shortly before the pandemic started.
Oh, okay.
It was the 5th of December 2019 when I started podcasting.
Yeah.
And a few years before that, I had started posting about A Course in Miracles on Facebook. So I think that had its reasons.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic has forced people to get off the rat wheel, and there's a lot of positives. I mean, it's very clearly divinely. I mean, we've all made the collective agreement to have this, otherwise it wouldn't be. And a big part of it is to do things differently and spend more time in quiet, and also I think people, what they thought was their secure supply might have gone away, which is very terrifying. But that's what my journey has been, is like repeatedly in 100,000 different ways what I needed shows up, so that I can really understand that my supply, it comes through things in the world, okay? Through a job, through a business, through a government, through an inheritance. But it's not from those things. And if you didn't have any of those things, your choices aren't, okay, I either have a job or something that brings me money, or I'm down and out homeless. That's what people believe. Now, I did go through some of those homeless shelters, but believe me, I was only there for the reasons that I spoke of. But I mean, this journey has been very, very abundant. I'm always in amazing, beautiful places if you look at my pictures. So the point of that being that we are supplied by our own infinite source. And if you broaden I don't know how I got into this, but anyway, it's right. If you broaden your horizons as to what you believe is possible, the way that it could come through to you, or let it be anyway. I was in Turkey and some money washed it from my feet in the ocean. It's like, be more open and understanding that if you lose your job, if you lose everything, that doesn't mean that you're down and out. And so I know in the pandemic, I guess that's how I got down this road, is that many people lost what they thought was their security in the world. But I was told that I would be ready for what was going to happen in the world by doing this journey. And then I would be called upon to teach. And I feel like, this is pretty much the time. I did some interviews in 2020 and this, and whatever comes, I just say, yes, I'll do it. But I feel like I have a big teaching mission or sharing anyway, because we all are teachers and students. I don't really mean teacher like, you know what I'm saying. We all are teachers and students, but I have a lot of sharing to do, because I think it's important even, and look what's going on, like inflation and all kinds of craziness, right? But if you understand that you are your source, meaning, I don't mean you, the character. Some people get so confused with this. I mean you, the infinite source. And if you would do contemplation every day, asking, who am I? And not just, I'm not talking about an answer in the mind. You want to experience, who am I? And just sit there, and I do that every day. I'm doing that thing where you drop behind into being, behind the story. And everybody does it differently, but if you continually ask, who am I really? Or just go there, like I'm going to go to being right now, I'm going to drop. I sit there and I say, okay, I'm setting aside everything that's temporary, everything that's moving, and what is left. Asking, what is left? There's something here still, and I'm going to sit with that something, and that something is what supplies you. There's only one power, it is not money. Now, of course, in this world, say, but I need money. Well, I need money too. But what you need will find its way to you, and also you will be guided with ideas. But be open. Like, for example, my journey, a big part of it is fueled, mostly, as far as money, is fueled by donations. That's how I was guided. I wouldn't have really chosen that, but it takes me kind of off all the systems of the world. So be open to receiving gifts from other people. That's okay. Giving is receiving. We talked about that before. If you give, so shall you receive is the truth. I mean, every chance I get, if I'm guided, okay, give, whether it be money or some other thing, I'm running to do it. And this is something I would like everyone to understand, that giving is receiving is actually the truth. And that's not just some metaphor, no. Like, I was in Hong Kong and I had just come from China where I was giving talks, had all this money, and I was guided to help this woman. And, there's a part of me that's like, I haven't had big chunks of money. And it's like, nope, because I knew. But when you share, when the guidance is there, what I need is going to come when I need it. And it does. I mean, I've been going and going and going. This journey started in 2008. And so anytime I get a chance to share, whether it be money or my vision for what I'm doing is that I will have this book, and I already have another book, my Twin Souls book. Everything I create, I will give the world for free. I will not sell anything. This is my own personal journey, not saying anything wrong with sales. And then I'm going to trust the universe to bring me the right person at the right moment or whatever to share what they have. And I was able to help somebody last year. Some of you might know Frances Bennett, but I was able to help her because a very loving person. I was stuck, kind of stuck in England and Ireland, and a loving person said, come stay with me. And I wasn't, paying any rent or anything. And then a huge influx of money came in. And I did give some money to the person, but not because they asked me. And then several $1,000s went to this person to help them. And people will be like, why would you do that when you're like, because I understand that I was guided. I didn't just do it, And so then now, I'm kind of in the wind, what I call in the wind again, just moving and not knowing a little bit. And then money just keeps coming. So my point of this is that we don't live in a world of lack. The universe is infinite. We need to move out of Newtonian physics and into quantum physics where all possibilities exist simultaneously. So if you give, that doesn't mean that you're losing something. You don't have to hold on so tightly. It's open your arms and share what you feel guided to share, whether it be your home, whether it be money, whether it be your wisdom. Because a lot of people are catching on to this, that they can just share what they have with the world. If they want to be a writer or a singer or a teacher or whatever it is, you just do it. And then you say, I accept all donations. And trust me, those donations will come because it's not the people. Remember, I said it's not of them, it's through them. So the universe will say, poke this person and say, send that person money. And I've heard some people were, a person tithed a whole year's salary to that person because they weren't charging any money. So this is my trajectory. Other people do it differently. But I'm only making the point that we don't live in a finite world, and it's okay to share and give what you have. You're not going to lose out on that. You'd like to add something to that, Monaco?
I think that's very important, the point of giving, because the thing is, I think I had times in my life where I was saying I can't, if I don't get back for giving, then I have to stop, right? Because I'm doing it for other people, I thought, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and this shift to saying I give because that's what I'm here to do, and that's the way it is, right? Has changes so much, and it also is another thing is that when you give, you can give more, because the thing is when you're not giving or you're blocking yourself, the giving
Yes.
stops. It trickles down. It doesn't stop completely because you can't stop because of who you are, but it will. But the will to give is part of the drive that drives us, right? In the Course in Miracles, it's called the miracle drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's our drive. There is no other. And that's that creativeness, that's that creativity that is who we are, right? It's always extending love. So in that way, I totally concur with what you're saying. That it's really important to give, and to give what you value most, because that's what you need most, right? So giving what you
Yeah,
value
yeah,
most is
yeah.
what you need most.
Yeah, the Course in Miracles says you cannot have what you do not give, right? You do not have what you are not willing to give. Now, I'm not just talking about
Only
money,
by giving you have
but
it. Yeah. Yeah,
right.
you can
And so
only
that,
have what you give. Yeah.
and also like that's goes with, like, I think it also doesn't also say that what you feel you need to protect, you don't actually have it. Isn't that the Course in Miracles? Anyway, it's the same principle. Like you don't need to
Yes, that
protect.
sounds right. Yeah.
You don't need to protect yourself so much. Like I have to hold on to what I have. See, that's the separation belief. But anyway, it's not that there's no truth in it. And you can freely give of yourself to the world. You know, you have to follow your own guidance. I mean, that's not to say because for me, I feel that I'm not going to ever do sales and charge money, but I certainly expect the universe to shower me, and the universe does shower through people making a donation to the journey or saying, "Hey, I have this place, come stay." So it's not like I'm not living in poverty. It's not a lack mentality. It's just that's my way of shifting the balance in the world. That I love money. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love being well off, and I want things, but I'm going to let the universe do it for me, and I'm going to share. Now everybody is different. Like my friend she paints drums. My friend Carol, and she's guided to sell them, and so it's different for everybody. I'm not saying don't ever do that, but you can if you are someone who feels like, yeah, wow, maybe I could give, because people say, but I want to be like this thing, but I can't because I don't know how to make money. And it's like, forget the money, just do it. Even if you just start on the side or something or whatever, just do it and give it freely. And then say, yes, I accept donations. And the thought might be, well, why would someone give me a donation? But it's not about someone. The universe, the infinite intelligence will find someone to go through and say, yes, here's some money. So it's not, if I journey, I say, if I believed that I was waiting for some other person to give me something, I wouldn't have lasted a week. It's coming through people because everything comes through people, whether it's a job, a business, or whatever, right? But I know that it's coming from my own infinite source, and whoever, if it's not that person over there, it's that person over there. And so, like I say, I don't rely on any one person, place, or condition for my supply. Not everybody's going to do it that way, but the point being that it's always different for me. So that shows you that it's not because I have a job or I have a business that I'm being supplied. It's like, no, I'm being supplied because I am. I am, therefore I have. And the universe is very abundant. And sometimes, it's squeezy. You get really squeezed, but that's only for the experience of the ebbs and flows. And, so you have to accept that sometimes it's very limited money. But the guide said that there are many on this planet who made the soul agreement. I know we're getting to the end of our time, but made the soul agreement that they would be one of the people who had less money, had sometimes even no money, not because they were in a state of lack. This is a big thing about abundance and manifesting a lot. No, because they wanted to actually empower themselves around money. Many, many mystics, who've lived over time, they lived that way. Like they didn't know, but they trusted in themselves or the universe to bring them. So there are people who have made that soul agreement that they're going to be, and if you are one of them, it can be quite terrifying because you don't understand. But trust me, if everything is falling away and you've done everything reasonably that you can do, then let go. And the universe will, or God, or whatever, will sweep you up and put you where you need to be. And it can be quite abundant. It doesn't mean that you're down and out. And then those who do have more than what they need, I encourage, because it is very terrifying to be that person out on the edge, completely like in the unknown, and you don't know anything. And then, so it's a challenging journey. So that a lot of people have made that choice, though, and I want them to know that it's okay. They didn't do anything wrong. But be open to receiving in other ways than you thought. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think we can see if anyone has a comment or a question.
Yeah.
And otherwise, we can start wrapping up. Let's see if there's something you didn't say yet that you would like to share. You can do that, and then I'll ask you for how one can reach you, and then we'll wrap it all up.
Okay. Well, I think I always end this way by saying, they talk about Jesus being fully human, fully divine, and other beings, Buddha, different beings, and that's what we're here to be. Like fully immerse ourselves in the divine spark that we came to be. Each are individuals, and it's intentionally that way, and also be fully divine, be the oneness. Remind yourself daily who you really are, so you don't get lost in it. But if you want to do something, then do it. And don't worry about the money part of it. It will just find its way. If you're in the right frequencies, if you're aligned with Source, and however way you do that, whether it be doing mantras and singing or whatever, it doesn't matter. Ideas that would not have been accessible to you before will suddenly appear. So the one way is big ideas. Go do this. Talk to this person. Just do it. So what my point being is, just do it. Don't try to hold yourself back, because whatever you are going to need, it will come, and especially when you're aligned. There's moments we can't get aligned. It's okay. Be gentle, be loving. But when you can get into a aligned state and stay as much as you can there, ideas is a big, big part of it that will come, that just like you getting the idea to do this show. It's like ideas will come that you didn't think of before. And there also people will suddenly show up and you message me, hey, you want to do this? Yes. It's like that starts to happen right and left if you're aligning with your Source and not racking your brain, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I know it's opposite of what we've been taught, but actually trying to figure something out doesn't figure it out. You're going to step back and breathe and calm yourself down. Spend some time in quiet, and then the answer will come. So I want to encourage everyone to that. And to just be yourself. Don't let anyone around you tell you anything. Sometimes someone will have a good suggestion, and you have to know the difference. Because another thing about this is know thyself. Right? Know thyself. Capital S and small s. Who are you? How do you receive information? How do you receive guidance in a particular form? And if you know yourself well enough, you'll know, oh, wow, this is something to this. I need to talk to this person. So that pretty much sums it up. Just listen to your inner guidance and stay aligned as you can with your Source. And forgive the world what you think you see in yourself. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful guests lined up on the podcast, so there's going to be a lot more to hear. So anyways, yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming, for participating, for sharing, and for showing us that for you found a practical way of living this message of trust. And in A Course in Miracles, one of the main characteristics of actually the one on which everything is founded of a teacher of God is trust. So
absolutely.
So this is so wonderful that you are sharing your example of how you live that trust. Thank you so much. And for all the listeners and watchers now,
Yeah.
please review this podcast, let people know about it, spread the word. And if you are one of the people who would like to share your journey and how you have changed your mind about the world, you're also welcome to be a guest on the podcast. Just approach
Great.
me. Okay.
Great.
So, Elizabeth, how can one reach you? And please give me this in writing as well afterwards so I can put it
I
in
will.
the show.
Well, basically, probably email. I mean, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, but my email is twinsouls, SOULS, 444 at Gmail. I also have Elizabeth Ann, with an E, N-A-N-N-E, Hill, 888 at Gmail. And we'd also like to add that a big fuel of this journey, a big part of what makes it go is donations. So if you do have PayPal and you would like to make a donation, use my email, which you're going to post, twinsouls444 at Gmail, and the other one. Very appreciated if you're inspired to do so. And yeah, I mean, you can see me on Facebook. I have an author page that you can like. And, oh, I always forget this. A friend of mine just made me this little small, what do you call it, like WordPress website. You know, it's not like a fancy thing, but it's elizabethannhill.com. That's Ann with an E. And it just has like links to my Facebook, my Instagram. I have a little small YouTube channel and different things that you can reach me. Yeah. So thank you.
So this podcast is available on many podcast platforms and on YouTube now. So
Very good.
enjoy it. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Monica. Wonderful.